Your lying blue eyes used to charm me, hypnotize me through and through.
Absolutely.
I wanted to have you on the show. I mean, we could talk theology and all that other kind of stuff, but I would venture to guess that your claim to fame probably isn't so much connected to like a fiery sermon that you've given, from a pulpit. It's probably due to your ties to the famous or infamous General Robert E. Lee. So I'm curious if maybe you can maybe just start us off explaining what this connection is, and why you're famous for it.
Well, it's interesting. So for context, I'm a collateral descendant of the Confederate general, meaning that I come down not from the direct line. I'm not a grandson or anything like that. I'm just a relative.
You're the great nephew of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. You're born and raised in the South. Why'd you decide to speak out against these Confederate monuments?
Well, after Charlottesville, my heart was broken. We have trouble finding the vocabulary to speak about these issues. But I want it to be said of me that there was a Lee in history who stood up for something that was right, instead of a General Lee who stood up for something that was wrong.
I would now like to introduce the Reverend Robert W. Lee IV. We've been talking about his great-great-grandfather. Reverend Lee, welcome.
My uncle, Robert E. Lee, so many greats removed, of course, has a storied history in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but today the world is watching.
The chair now recognizes Reverend Robert Wright Lee, descendant of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
I am not the first Robert Lee to testify before the United States Congress. One did in 1866 during Reconstruction. It is indeed another person who bears a first and surname identical to mine, and whose lineage I bear as a nephew of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
That's history. A descendant of Confederate General Robert E. Lee says it's time to put away.
After time passed, we realized that we had to reckon with that legacy. And part of reckoning with that legacy is realizing that statues like these can't stand if we want to have a more equitable and just community.
You can